Let's get into this podcast.
Yeah.
And the climate continues.
As the world turns.
Yeah.
Remember that? Do you remember that soap?
I do. When I would play hooky from school, pretend to be sick, and stay home with my mom, that's what was on TV.
That's all there was on television. It was
That and like Price is Right.
That's right. Before streaming, you had to actually wait for programming to get interesting, and it was pretty rough. So yeah. Anyway,
that's what it was. Anyway, so
as the world turns.
For my topic today, I'm going to do a revisit segment. So what does that mean? Well, within the climate change theme that we've been covering over the past few weeks, I came across a few updates on topics that we've been covering. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to reach back over the past couple weeks and months as we have been covering climate change and update the listeners on where we are with some of these fan favorites, so to speak. Ready to dive in?
Wait, are you doing like a latest and greatest hits kind of thing?
Well, I got 6 updates.
Okay. So we are doing
6 updates. We can count it down.
Okay. I like it.
It's going to kind of jump all over, all within the climate theme, but all things we've talked about roughly before.
All right. Are you starting with 6 or are you starting with number 1?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say they're ranked in importance, but I'm curious to see what you think.
I think we should just pretend like you did that.
Okay, let's pretend. And I'm going to start with 1, but I'm not going to tell you if one's least or most important.
I was hoping you'd start with 6 because that's a countdown.
I mean,
just pretend like you're starting with 1, but we're going to pretend like you're starting with 6. That way it gets like, that's how you do the New Year's Eve thing. You don't do 1 to 10. You do like,
but
10,
I didn't write my notes out like
9,
that. I'm going to get tripped up. I didn't write my notes like that. First up, or number 6 for Camp Antoine, is the summer's nearing an end, as we all know, unless you're listening to this in the future. But summer is coming to an end, and if you get kids, if you have them, they're back at school. But it's still hot out. And how's our electrical grid handling all of this? We've covered infrastructure before. So far, the power systems have held up in these record heat waves. In fact, we saw 2 of the hottest months on record this summer, and states like Arizona broke its demand record 7 times during a single heat wave. But this offers no guarantee that the utilities will always be able to keep up with this heat and keep the lights and air conditioning running, especially as the climate continues to warm, which is what the experts are telling us will happen. And who are we to doubt them when they've been right so far? So how did the electrical grid manage to stay running, you may ask? Well, there were new wind turbines, solar panels, and brand new batteries to store more energy. Those all played a major role in being able to keep up with the demand, prop up the grid on the hottest days of the summer. But no one can deny that natural gas and coal plants remained a bedrock, and we've covered that before.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that those methods are our coping mechanisms to keep the AC running and all those types of things, right? It gets hot, we crank up the AC. And we covered this before. That feeds the climate change monster. So if we have to turn up the AC and our only way of powering that is to burn more fossil fuels, then we're just going to keep this vicious cycle going because of the emissions they produce.
And we have to, because we're migrating to parts of the country that are in hot zones. So it's if we're going to continue to live in places that are going to continue to climb in terms of the average temperature, then then you're going to be caught in this vicious cycle, because we're not going to sacrifice, we're not going to help people relocate and maybe do something different with these heated up zones. I mean, people have to be able to live wherever they want to live, and so what if it's a flood zone or a hurricane alley or on the side of a volcano? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. This is, we got to be free. You can't tell people where to live, and they want to take on the responsibility of whatever happens if a natural disaster comes their way. I mean, that is until their governor, usually requests aid, via taxpayer. Usually there is some yeah, something bad does happen, and then they usually do have to come back to the government, and then it's like a whole big hullabaloo because the governor is usually the opposite party from the sitting president, and then they can't really meet with them because then they'd be admitting that we're not some independent statehood, and there is a reliance on the Fed, even though they want to campaign and say that the Fed get out of my business until they need them. Anyway, you keep going. You keep going. I mean, I digress. You continue with this one. Yeah. So people are living in hot zones and they're running their AC. It's okay. Yeah. It's cool. It's cool.
It's fine. It's fine. We're all gonna die. Manager of reliability assessments at a national grid watchdog says that, and I quote, we're seeing the grid operating at the outer limits of its capabilities. So, folks, we're in uncharted territory. Should be no big surprise to anyone that's paying attention. And the extreme weather events aren't over yet, as we're in hurricane season. It's in full swing. We're seeing them hit us left and right, and increasingly hotter days are predicted for years to come, as I said before. So,
so if you're you're leaving the whole, because you just sort of said that we've implemented a whole bunch of like solar panels or wind turbines. Is there any one part of the country that's doing this more than others, or you're just saying in general as a nation? Because we're talking about America, right? Or we're not even talking about global, right? We're just talking about what the U.S.
in this scenario, it's I mean, everywhere is doing it, and there are states in the U.S. that do have renewable solar farms and wind farms. Like we do have it. I wouldn't say it's a standard, and I'd almost say go so far as to say it's the states that are doing it. It's kind of like a dirty secret, and that it goes against their political ideology, and they don't want to make too big of a deal out of it. But there are states. I don't have them offhand, but when I was reading the article, they do have these things. They do exist in this country. They're by no way as prevalent as they could or should be. We went over this before, where I think renewables were at a 12%. Hit 12%, which is an increase. And while it is helping to prop up our energy grid, it is doing nothing to cut carbon emissions. Or I should say, if it did, it still didn't reduce it to the point where we didn't reduce the total amount of carbon emissions. We went over this last time. Carbon emissions actually were up by almost 1%, and we're supposed to be cutting it by 50%. So we are doing
That's because renewables. We burn trash, because trash is also a renewable, right? So if you're going to get away with these loopholes, right? That's
Florida's great at burning trash. Yeah. It qualifies as renewables. They actually sell that as credits to corporations to offset their dirty operations, so they don't have to change anything. When really we're just pumping more carbon into the atmosphere and polluting neighboring communities, which happen to be minorities more often than not. So there are layers to this onion, but that is where we are with the electrical grid. But I also mentioned earlier that school was back in session, and it's worth noting that schools are ill prepared to provide a safe environment for kids or their teachers. I will note that the other faculty members sit in an air-conditioned office more often than not. So that's something to note. I know that in our schools it's like that, where the kids and the teachers are sweating their butts off while the rest of the school sits in the AC. It's always an interesting dynamic there. But research shows that excessive temperatures affect a student's ability to learn. No big surprise. One study showed that students are 12% more likely to fail a test if it was 90 degrees versus 72 degrees, which I found pretty interesting. We're not talking about getting more questions wrong. We're talking about failing a test. So that's pretty significant. And teachers don't perform well either, for obvious reasons. But there's also the risk of heat-related illnesses that we've covered before. And school is unique, and that there's no escape once you're there. And many schools, as I just said, don't have AC at all. And the method from our childhood, I don't know about you, but we were told, turn off the lights, put your head on your desk, and sweat it out until the buses come. That's not really going to work out, and when it's 100 degrees out consistently. You didn't have that.
No.
Antoine's making a face.
No.
Well, were you sitting pretty in an AC, an air-conditioned classroom?
All right. Here's the thing. My elementary school was on a beach. And so maybe that's what, maybe there was a little bit of help with the, wind coming off the water. It's usually cooler if you're
I
doing
remember
that.
the early June months, maybe even late May. It was hot, and I still remember, and I never knew if this was right. They would turn the lights off. They would tell everyone to put their heads on their desk, and you would just kind of like take a nap for the last couple hours of school until it was time to leave. And some people would take a piece of paper and fold it like an accordion, and then you have like a fan. And they actually would tell us to stop doing it because you're heating up the air. And it was like the most annoying thing because it was the
Pretty
only
cool.
immediate relief you could get.
Yeah.
And at the time, as a child, it made sense, and I could understand the logic now. But I don't know if that's true. So I was always curious to know
Oh
if
dang it! I was really hoping
I want
I
that to be
was
like a
hoping.
MythBusters
Yeah.
episode or thing. Will someone be able to debunk that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So shout out to anyone who can run an experiment and measure. But yeah. So that's that. Just wanted to call that out. Infrastructure wise, electrical grid wise, school wise, we have a long ways to go. We had covered a little bit of this in the work environment before, but it turns out we're not taking care of the kids either. Big surprise. All right. So next up and second on our list, we previously covered how a UN air pollution law loophole wound up polluting our oceans. Remember, you can't pump it into the sky, but no rules against pumping it into the ocean. Well, the prime ministers of the island nations of Antigua and Barbuda appeared at legal hearings at the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea in Germany, of all places, landlocked. To
Do you think
give,
people show up with tridents?
I was hoping so, with a name like that.
It seems a little dramatic. I mean, look, this is a dramatic thing. I mean, I'm very much for whatever everyone's trying to do. But the say that again. What was it? The tribunal called
The International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea.
I mean, the law of the sea. Yeah, I just feel like the judge or the arbiter, whoever is in charge of the tribunal, has a long white beard and wears a seashell crown, a crown made of seashells. That's it. Feels more. It would not be surprising if that were televised and I saw a man with a long white beard holding a trident and a crown made of seashells. I wouldn't even
He
bother.
doesn't have a gavel. He has one of those big seashells he kind of blows into.
I a conch. If,
Yes.
if if he had a conch and he blew it to signal the beginning of the session and he blows it again to end the session, there is not a bone in my body that would have an element of surprise to it. I would actually just say that makes sense. In fact, I'm more surprised to just see normal people doing what normal people do with these kinds of serious matters, someone actually arbitrating with plain clothes or what have you. Look, if the English can still wear wigs, okay, for their judicial proceedings, I don't think that this is completely out of the ordinary for a man to wear a seashell crown or a woman or non-binary, whatever, to wear a seashell crown and arbitrate over the law of the sea tribunal. I'm going to call it that, by the way. Now, the law of the sea tribunal.
Yeah. There you go. That's accurate enough. And you've painted a great picture. So anyway, these two prime ministers showed up to this law of the sea tribunal, as Antoine would put it, in Germany to give evidence on whether carbon emissions absorbed by the ocean should be considered marine pollution and what obligations nations have to protect the marine environment. Fair questions. And also, yeah, it's pollution. Like, yes, it's to ask that question. How is that not established? Like, that is absolutely pollution. But this is where we are, folks. So the tribunal will next hear from Germany, France, Saudi Arabia, and Australia on September 25th, and then issue an advisory opinion once they hear from everyone. So they heard from these two island nations, those countries, and that will come. They will come up with this advisory opinion, which is not legally binding, but is intended at least to offer guidance to craft climate protection law. Yeah.
Well, why? Why would we ever ascribe to international law in that way, right? Why would we ever come together as a world and say that this affects us all, not unequally, but it does affect us all nonetheless, and actually, abide by these things. I mean, look, here's the thing. I mean, we've got the UN doing like war crimes stuff all the time, and nothing sometimes stuff comes of it if it's a weaker nation. But if you're powerful enough, no one's gonna mess with you. You got an army. No one's gonna come in and try to arrest a sitting dictator or president of a country with nukes. You know what I'm saying? So it sucks. I feel it's good for publicity's sake to get out there and publicize that something is going wrong, but it does. I think it blows to be the representative who has to attend these kinds of things, knowing that ultimately nothing will come of it aside from a mention in the paper or the media picking it up. But there is something there's something to say about that. That's fine, but that's just so disheartening. It sucks. I can't say anything else about it.
It does. I mean, we've covered this in various ways on the pod before. The oceans, folks, if you haven't heard, if you haven't been paying attention, they're critical to our survival. Excessive carbon pollution acidifies our waters and bleaches our coral. Again, look at our past episodes, look at some of the clips, we've covered it.
Which is furthermore, because it's not legally binding, why the representatives, whoever's going, they should dress up as their favorite sea animal or fictitious sea creature. I'm still holding out hope. I mean, I just feel like someone should
be better if they could find out what their local marine life was like, because for some of these landlocked countries, you're just going to get like little prawns or something, like whatever lives in like a lake.
Yeah,
I don't know. You'll have some interesting stuff.
I'm saying I wish it's like
maybe an eel or catfish.
Sure. A catfish, yeah. Why not? I am Neptune. I'm representative of Antigua. I speak for the oceans. Something like that.
Quiet catfish.
Just make a spectacle of it so that you draw more attention to your cause.
It's like the game Clue. They only go by their like character names.
Yeah, perfect. I like that. That's a good reference. I like
that.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So it doesn't just acidify. It doesn't just bleach the coral. You have to mention, because we're talking about the island nations, that climate change is raising the sea levels and low-lying island states, and there are several of them. Don't think that there's only one or two. There are several. Will become submerged by the end of the century. So it actually is a huge deal. It's not just about their marine life dying out, which is going to affect us all, but these islands are going to actually be underwater. So when we have our big hurricanes that flood our coastlines, the water recedes. We get to rebuild. They won't. And then we're going to have to welcome them in with open arms because we did this to them. So it's going to be tragic.
Or turn their boats back around.
Yeah, right. Yeah, either one.
That's more likely. Let's be honest here.
Yeah. All right. So third on our revisit list is Maui's wildfire. And this is honestly a quick one. This is just a bit of a PSA. It's alarming, but I didn't want to not mention it. For those of you that live in Hawaii or know someone that does, please check with your local government to know whether or not your water is safe to drink. It might actually take months or years to restore clean drinking water to everyone that's been impacted. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's been multiple reports of people drinking their tap water and watering their gardens with it, only to learn like a couple weeks later that they should not have been doing that, and they've been consuming this stuff. And I don't know if it's still going on or if the word has finally permeated to everyone, but I just want to, it's a real concern. And apparently there are a lot of people making this mistake, and no one knows how many more people are making this mistake. I know there's been local efforts to get the word out, these pop-up community centers and stuff, but apparently it's not as easy as we coming from this more urban environment may think that it should be to get the word out and reach everyone. So just doing our part to raise awareness. Again, if you know someone or you live in Maui and are listening, please check to make sure that your drinking water is safe. That is terrifying that people are consuming this and they don't even know to ask the question.
I mean, that makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, look, there was a breakdown of communication, that helped further the tragedy. But it's not something I would have thought of. You need someone to come in and experts, for instance, to put up notices, notifications and get the word out to the people to say, the drinking water might be contaminated as a result of this natural disaster. It's a shame.
Yeah, and it was a fire, so it's like I guess you just don't realize that, it's not like my property was damaged, right? It's you may have been unaffected physically, your property, I assume, and maybe that's why there's not so much of an association or a concern, but the treatment plant, I assume, or whatever infrastructure there is, was damaged, was compromised in some way, and it is impacting people's drinking water and water they're using to water their vegetables or home gardens. So,
do you know if there's been a mass effort to get clean drinking water, like bottled water, to the people?
I think to a degree, through those community pop-up centers that get the word out and help people secure clean drinking water. But if you've ever been to Hawaii, and I have once, and not to everywhere, but it's got really rural areas, more than you would think, being the size that it is. So, and there are people without running water there, period. So there is a range of communities on the islands. So I can imagine that there are people who are just not getting reached. So if that's the case, they may not be given clean water either, or at least in any way that is sustainable for them. We need to like carry gallons up the mountain or something. So I don't really know how it works over there, but I think, what I just wanted to do was raise awareness, because apparently not everyone knows that you're not supposed to drink the water. So they may have fixed it by now, but everyone should just at least check.
That's good. Yeah, nice update.
All right, on to our fourth update, and a fan favorite, corn. One of Antoine's favorite segments of the climate series.
I love corn. Corn is such a complicated and interesting vegetable. Is it a vegetable?
Yeah, I'm going to go with vegetable.
Okay.
I'm going to go with vegetable.
Because it grows, does it grow in the ground? No, it grows above the ground, but it's a vegetable.
My God, have you never seen a corn stalk?
That's what I was thinking. It's like a corn stalk, yeah, which is funny, just because, but vegetables. Yeah. Anyway, either way, corn. I love it.
All right.
What's going on with the corn?
On a past episode, we covered the detrimental effects that heat has on various crops like corn, ranging from its yield to its nutrition. And well, we might have had our answer the entire time as to how to fix all of this. The corn of the future is actually hundreds of years old. Now, why is it so special? It makes its own nitrogen, right? So I'll explain. The corn produces a mucus, which is kind of gross, but it produces this mucus that feeds bacteria. And that bacteria pulls nitrogen out of the air to fertilize the corn. So the corn is self-fertilizing, which is a really, really cool thing. And it's actually a really fascinating article, and it had a ton in. I probably could have done a whole episode just on that. So go check it out, folks. It's on our episode description on YouTube under sources. But basically, this has been known since the 1980s, when a scientist noticed a type of corn growing in Mexico, which was larger than its American counterpart, but took a longer time to mature. And it had this syrup dripping from the stalk. Impressively, it did all of this in very poor soil. And that's when the discovery was made. But we didn't have the DNA tools that we have today to do anything about it. So the discovery was basically shelved for years. No one really knew what to do with it. They're like, okay, this corn self-fertilizes, whoop-de-doo. What are we going to do with it? But now this is obviously a big deal because producing fertilizer poisons our air, our waterways, and today's growing methods degrade soil. And so this can actually be a huge game changer, not just for corn, but if they can isolate how the corn is producing this mucus, it could be a game changer for other crops as well. And you don't need to keep turning over the soil or doing whatever you're doing to it. Like that, it's hidden. If you know anything about farming and agriculture and what it's doing to the environment and the ecosystems and its runoff and its constant supply chain that it takes to prop a farm up, like this could actually be a huge, huge deal. I don't want to get too excited about it, but it is a pretty exciting development, I think.
How does it taste?
Like shit.
Oh, you know this? Did you actually?
No, I don't know. What do you mean?
Well, it matters.
The corn? I'm sure the corn is fine.
No, that's not
I'm sure it's fine.
No,
I'm sure it's
we
fine.
primarily eat sweet corn in America. And the reason for that is because most other corns, people, or at least indigenous people do not particularly favor it. We have tons of different types of corn in this country. There's so many varietals of corn.
It's a fair point.
The only corn you see in the store is yellow sweet corn. So is this
there's
yellow?
white. There's white sweet corn, which I I
Okay,
think is
fine. So a white sweet corn. Is this a sweet corn?
I don't know.
Okay, because if
And
it's
it's
not,
fair because
it's probably
Mexico
dead in the
has
water.
Mexico, I believe, is where maize originated. If I
Yes,
don't want to get
well,
my
I think so. I
facts
don't know.
wrong.
Yeah, I could be
Yeah,
wrong. I mean, that's the thing.
I
I'm not
feel
even
like
sure. Is it?
I feel like it may have come from there, or at least the area where this was discovered. So Antoine is right. It could be a different varietal that has a much different taste, but if you can transfer this DNA, these characteristics, these attributes to a nice stalk of white Jersey corn.
Sweet corn.
There you go. You get that sweet corn, you get that sweet mucus.
Sweet mucus. That sweet syrupy mucus. I like it. I like it. I mean, the corn is so problematic because of the way in which we pay farmers to either grow it or not grow it, because the whole farming subsidy thing is an absolute mess and disaster. But it would be cool to if there is a more sustainable, even if you don't get rid of all that stuff in terms of like overgrowing and undergrowing. But it would be nice, yeah, if there was something that was more sustainable that we could look to, and especially if you could transfer that to maybe other types of fruits and vegetables. The more the merrier. Because we may not want to eat this. I would love more varieties of corn. I relish the opportunity to to feast on multicolored corns, different, the corn that you put in the cornucopia. Basically, the corn we usually use as window dressing if you're doing like a Thanksgiving play. That corn, you'll
You don't
buy
even know
it.
what it tastes. Do you know what it tastes like?
No, because I'm saying no one cooks it. All you do is you buy. I'm saying it's the corn you see in school plays. Like if someone's going to do a Thanksgiving play, the teacher goes out, buys some like purple corns, different colored corns, and they stick it in the cornucopia, and they say, they're like, look how beautiful this is. That's the only time you see that corn. No one actually goes out and eats. I should say anyone that's not doing a special type of restaurant or a special type of cuisine. So I would be very interested to know what these corns taste like. I was hoping that in this story they mentioned what this corn happened to taste like. It's got the sweet syrupy mucus. Maybe it tastes like pancakes. Maybe it's like a maple leaf syrup.
Let's just go with that. Let's just go with that.
It might be pancake corn.
It's cotton candy corn, folks.
That's even better.
There you go.
The true sweet corn, which then makes this an imposter. So the yellow corn ends up being the imposter corn, and then this corn is the true sweet corn.
There you go, folks. If you ever happen to run into Antoine on the street, come bearing gifts, and he prefers maize.
I do prefer maize. I prefer maize.
All right. So update number 5, or I guess this would be 2 in Camp Antoine. The latest news in the sector is that insurers gave Ron DeSantis millions, and in return, he urged a 3-day legislative session that produced laws making it harder for policyholders to sue insurance companies. An example of what that looks like. A hurricane hits Florida. There's a family that survives, but their house is destroyed. They were insured. It took 3 months for the insurance company to finally give the family a $30,000 payout, which is about 1/10 of the damage. The family cannot sue the insurance company, as DeSantis's new law makes it harder to sue insurance companies for acting in bad faith and removes the right of homeowners to recover attorney fees, even in lawsuits they ultimately win. Additionally, the new law allows insurers to create new policies with mandatory binding arbitration agreements in exchange for cheaper rates. What does that mean? If homeowners take the cheaper rates, they lose the right to take the insurer to court. And if that's not enough, the law also shortens the window that a homeowner can file a claim, and he invested $1 billion of taxpayer funds into a state-run reinsurance fund to help insurance companies mitigate their losses.
If you like these, this is like the laundry list. If you like these and want more, vote Ron DeSantis for president.
My God.
If you want this in your neck of the woods, this is the kind of capitalistic rundown that you feel most comfortable supporting, please vote for Ron DeSantis. If you're running the primaries, make him your number one pick, because this is for the people. You don't know it. you may not see the big picture, but in the end, this is going to help you out because this is going to keep the economy going and it's going to keep you employed. So you this is really about the people. It sounds like it's about the insurance companies. It's not. It's about the people. It's letting you know what's up. We'll leave it at that.
I know you're not. I know you say he's not uniquely bad, but man, he's pretty terrible.
He's just more open about it. Everyone's doing it. He's just like, I know who keeps me in office, and it's not the voting public. That's essentially what's happening here, right? He's saying the people who would vote against me are not numerous enough to unseat me and have me removed from office. The people who do keep me in office, who pay my bills, who keep the lights on, that's who this is written for, which apparently are insurance companies. Clearly, they're far more important a constituent to Ronnie Boy than the people casting those paper ballots on election night. So it's wild. It's wild that you could be so brazen about the reality of our dear republic. But make no mistake, listener, he's not alone. He's just not trying to hide it, which is wild.
I guess he doesn't have to, because clearly he's being voted back in.
Exactly.
So whatever his messaging is in Florida, or I don't know if it's state run down there, the media, but like something isn't sinking in with these folks, or they're not comprehending it. That is special stuff, man. Wow. Anyway, so our sixth and final update, number 1 on Antoine's list. The emperor penguins. We covered these last time in a previous episode. Here's a quick update on some recent research with these animals. 4 out of 5 colonies analyzed saw no chicks survive last year as sea ice disappears. And it was something.
I did see something about that. Yes, that they're dying because the sea ice is disappearing. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. And I honestly don't even know what to really say about this catastrophic event, but I'll just paint a picture of what that means. All right, they're dying. What is it? Plague, famine. Like what's the deal? Penguins need stable.
Paint us a picture of a world without the emperor.
I'm going to paint a picture of the world of how they die. It's pretty horrific. So penguins need stable sea ice attached to land for nesting and raising their chicks. Sea ice has been breaking up much earlier this time around, and chicks fell into the water and drowned. That's it. And if it wasn't that, they drifted away on that sea ice that broke away from land. Their parents lost them, and the chicks starved to death on the floating ice. So that's how they died. That's how 4 out of the 5 colonies lost all of their chicks. And I think it's something like 30% of all penguins or something like that, because that was only the 4 out of 5 as a stat for the ones that were being analyzed. But what does this mean? So over 90% of emperor penguin colonies and 65% of all Antarctica's native species, including seals, will be extinct by 2100 as the Earth continues to warm. Because humans,
that's a long time. I would have thought it'd be much sooner than that. It's 2100. Jesus.
I mean, it's the end of the century.
It's like a conservative estimation. I don't think they'll last that long.
Who knows, right? I mean, you're right. Things could just deteriorate much, much faster, especially if we don't stop. I mean, the way that it's going, honestly, it will probably ramp things up. Like it just
Yeah, it's like a snowball thing that's going on right now. Exactly. It's just going to keep getting worse, and it should build on itself. So I 2100. That seems really. That's a wildly conservative number. I have no evidence to back it up, so we'll go with it because we want to be fact based here. 2100 is the number, but it does sound very surprising. I would have, if I were a betting man. Lord knows I love Vegas. So I would bet they'd all be gone by like 2060.
It's possible. Who knows?
2100 would be the last remnants, maybe if they're kept in aquariums or zoos. So like captive, but wild. I would say 2060.
All right. Well, we'll check back.
We'll check back in 2060.
We'll check back, folks. We'll give you an update in a couple decades. So that's the segment, folks. It's serious stuff. None of those updates were pleasant, except for the corn one, maybe. But to Antoine's point, maybe it tastes like crap. So maybe not a great update. But hey, maybe we could transfer some of that over, some of that sweet mucus DNA over to some of our other stuff. But make no mistake, climate change is real. Climate change is here. We need to demand climate action now from our political leaders if we want to dig ourselves out of this very, very deep hole that we have put ourselves in. I don't know why we did this. I don't know why we continue to do this, but I really, really hope we figure out a way to, I don't know, unite. Because thing is, the maddening part of this is we know we have the tools and the knowledge to fix it. We know what we have to do. We just don't. We don't.
What
is that? What is that?
Isn't that was it Running Man? Marathon Man? Remember that?
Running Man is with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No, the old series. It's like an old series. It's like we will build him better, faster. Don't you?
I know I don't know what it's called and I didn't watch it. But I know what you're talking about.
I didn't watch it either. That's why it's hard for me to.
Yeah, that's why it's a terrible, terrible reference. It. Yeah, it's like third hand. This is like third hand accountant person. Like, what are you doing?
It's too old. It's beyond us. It's beyond us. I just remember tell. I remember tell of that reference, and so I tried to bring it to bear.
There you go.
And I failed.
Well, the story died. The story died with you.
From my end, I was going to tell you that global temperatures in July and August were approximately 1.5 C hotter than pre-industrial levels. A first look at what the Earth will feel like if the climate crisis isn't properly addressed. According to the Copernicus Climate Change Service, both July and August saw global temperatures between 1.5 and 1.6 C above pre-industrial levels. It's the first time
That's
ever.
Exactly what we wanted to stay under. That was the thing we did.
That was the next part of the sentence is that for 2 consecutive months it exceeds the Paris Agreement's target of limiting global warming to 1.5 C. That was a little update. I just thought that I could throw that in at the end of the episode to hammer the point home.
Wow. So we got a taste. We got a taste. The 2 hottest months on record around the world. We exceeded what every scientist is telling us that we don't want to see become the norm. And we got a taste of what that was like. So if you don't want July and August to be all the time, we should do something about this. Because if it's all the time, then the new July and August is going to be really terrible.
July and August are the new 20. I kind of wanted to make like a Father Bean reference.
A what?
The Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, yeah. Try and make that noise.
I was thinking it's.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of like that. I don't know.
It's a taste. That's what I'm saying. It's a taste. It's like
it's a taste. Oh, okay, I get it. That's great.
July and August, the side of Father Beans.
And a nice bottle of Chianti.
And a nice bottle of Chianti. Because that's how bad it is. It's like serial killer taste. It's that bad.
It's not Chianti. People. It's that sweet wine because we went over wine before.
Because every wine is from Long Island now. It all tastes like vinegar. People.
Those great Concord grapes are the only thing that can survive.
You just add a little sugar to it. A little bathtub wine. It's basically where it's going to come to.
Oof. Cool.
Rough episode, people. Rough episode. We got to find more shining points in the climate crisis debacle, right? There's got to be some silver lining to this all, right? I mean, if it's warming, somebody's got to be enjoying it. I saw
we're all going to go to war over the new shipping channels that are being plowed through the permafrost.
Oh, without a doubt. But I think like Michigan, those places might become a little bit more desirable to live. I think I remember if this is again, I'm pulling this because this episode is so dark. I'm trying to add some levity to it, some light. And I think I remember seeing like 2 states in the union are going to become a little bit more favorable to live because they're going to not be as frigid. They're not going to be as as inhospitable as they normally are in the winter.
They're just going to be overcrowded. That's great.
Well, everyone's going to flee there, of course. I mean, no, they're not going to flee there because that's not what we do. We go towards the danger. This is we want to go. More people are going to move to Florida because they heard about these great insurance hikes. I mean, there's nothing like that. I can't wait to buy a house in a place where I might not get insurance. That sounds like a fantastic deal. But you know what? I bet you if I look at the demographics of people moving, more people will be moving to Florida next year. I bet you bottom dollar. Another bet because I'm a betting man.
I can't argue that. You're probably right.
Yeah, I know I'm right.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to the marketing campaigns for Michigan and Wisconsin and all those places that apparently are going to make out.
Yeah. So,
what do they do now? Pure Michigan.
Yeah,
I don't know what Wisconsin's would be.
Something with cheese, most likely. Come up here and get the cheddar.
Unspoiled cheese.
That's not what they sound like. Are they the ones that's like, don't you know? No? Is that them?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to think. Is Bobby's World? Was his mom? Was that Wisconsin?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Come up here, don't you know? That sounds a little more Caribbean.
I was gonna say a little. Right by
come
the
up
beach.
to that's
the half-baked reference, folks.
It's a good one. It's a good one. Anyway, Jamie, where can they find us if you want to learn more about the impending end of the world?
Folks, we have new clips out every week. Fridays are the full episodes, and like and subscribe to us on YouTube, Twitter, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And with that, my dear listener, Retraction out.